Hello, welcome back to We Love the State. This is the state-sanctioned podcast, otherwise known as the best goddamn podcast on the market right now, right, Ben?
Hallelujah.
How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Enjoying
right.
the sound of the rain right now, and ready to start a new week.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been it's a good podcast. Definitely somebody who isn't shy from the spotlight, because I know that Mike does do some stand-up comedy, so he's always good conversation to have, and it's first of many, I hope.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we definitely have to have him back on. So a little off topic, off of Mike. Today is the first time I've been to church in over a decade. And
wow, and you didn't burst into flames?
I did not burst into flames. And
wow.
I tweeted about this, but I said in what was it? In hilarious karmic justice or something like that. I don't remember the exact wording, but in a show of like hilarious karmic justice, I, an atheist, had to go to have to start regularly attending church in order for my son to go to this Christian school, and that way we get him out of the public school system. And they're like, well, are you attending a church? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, you have to attend some kind of church to send him here. And I was like, okay, and
I didn't realize there was strings like that attached. I wonder if that's like pretty typical of Christian schools. I mean,
I grew up going to Christian schools, and I don't know if that was like a prerequisite, but it was. I wouldn't have noticed either way because my dad was, my dad's pastor. I was at church every Sunday anyway, but we had a great time. Like the pastor was funny, and so there was at least some entertainment value to it. And my kids had a hell of a time. Like no pun intended, but they had a great time.
They had a heaven of a time.
They had whatever word Jesus is okay with of a time. But yeah, their like children's ministry is awesome. Like huge, like indoor play place with all these tunnels and slides and stuff like that. That's where my youngest got to go, and he was crying when we had to go home, because
wow,
so
that's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I've never been one to like really push my religious views on my kids, like, and it's because I never had a choice what my beliefs were whenever I was growing up, and I didn't like that. I didn't think that was healthy, and so I was like, so for my kids, I will explain to them whatever they want to know. I'll if they're interested in religion, like, okay, cool, yeah, let's go get you a Bible, let's go get you a Quran, or not Dianetics. I'm sorry, if they were Scientologists, I'd be like, nah, that's bullshit. But
yeah.
But yeah, like I've never tried to push my lack of beliefs onto them. I kind of want them to find their own beliefs organically, and they had so much fun. And
how'd you pick the church? Did you just kind of look at like Google Maps and go, this one's close, let's try this one? Well, or is this like the church that you grew up in?
No, that's down in Kansas.
Okay.
We it's a friends of ours go there, and so we just kind of tagged along with them. There's like a coffee shop there, and I'm a coffee addict, and so it was a really easy sell for me. I was like, oh, my friends go there, and there's a coffee shop, and yeah, I'm good.
I like churches like that are almost more like low key and personable than a lot of pomp and circumstance. Not to poo poo on like the Catholic faith and all that stuff, but it's like, I'd rather, because I thrive in real, and so much of that kind of stuff is just, it's rehearsed. It's just, yeah. And it's just stale for me. So
yeah, I know.
Well, that's cool. Do you tell your dad that you went to church? I'm sure he would be so proud.
I mean, he knew that we were going to start going back to church. I don't know if he knew that we started today, but I'll have to text him and ask him. But anyway, yeah, it was a great experience. My kids are super excited to go next week. But there's also another thing where it's like, okay, like I don't believe in anything fun, but uh there is something about sort of the like traditionalism of like you have a man and wife and their children, and Sunday morning they're getting up and going to church together as a family, you know. And even though like I don't believe in it, there's something about that was just kind of like felt felt good. It felt like this was healthy for my family. It felt like it was healthy for my kids, and it was just, I don't know. It was, like I said, it was just a really positive experience, and it was good to see my kids in there, you know.
Well, even if you're an anarchist or just agnostic, I mean, there's no. I mean, I suppose some people might disagree with this, but there's really not a downside of having your kids, be indoctrinated, because it's, at least the New Testament teaching is stuff that any good parent wants their kids, to do and act in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
respecting your elders and, believing in something that's bigger than themselves. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of good things, again, regardless of where you fall in that belief system. But I just don't see downside to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Granted, you're not, I mean, if you were going to a Scientology church, then yeah, maybe there would be some downsides, or
Yeah. Well, it's
or those weird Mormons.
yeah. I remember even when I was like a crazy like angry atheist, like I used to pick fights with people on Facebook all the time. Like somebody would be like, "Oh, thank God that, I was able to make my car payment this month or whatever." And I was like, "Fuck that, man." And like I would pick fights with them. Like I was such a piece of shit
Well, I
back
think you, like
then.
you said, you went from one extreme to the other. So,
Yeah.
like I think that's just going to be natural in that progression.
Yeah, for sure. But it was, I don't know. It was oh, I totally fucking forgot where I was going with this. I don't know, but it was just,
It's got to be weird,
yeah.
just because it's not you anymore, but then yet you're still finding some positive. You're pulling positive out of that. So
Hmm.
it's got to be kind of a weird,
Well,
not a conflict of interest, but
traditions exist for a reason, you know, like there are bad traditions out there, yeah, but it's like I I I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of embracing the tradition of taking your family to church, you know. I mean, it's great socialization for my kids. I know nobody's going to try to sell my kids drugs or show them porn or anything, you know. I know that I know the stories that they're going to hear about, and I know that there are good lessons attached to those stories, so they're learning important values. And even though I don't believe in the magical element of it, there's still so much, like mountains and mountains of positive that you can glean off of that, you know?
right.
And so it just, I don't know. I don't have any negative feelings about it. There was somebody that was, because I put this tweet out there, and like I think all of this is hilarious. I think it's deeply funny that, I'm this atheist dude that used to be like real like, oh fuck Christianity, and now I'm taking my kids to church. Like I just think it's funny. It's, and
That's the great thing about life. I mean, it's there's definitely a cosmic humor to like how we progress through life, because you look back and you're like, how did I go from that to this,
mhm.
which you almost think is completely contradictory, but it is quite humorous when you like, how did I get here
Yeah.
and why am I here, and
Yeah. I know
start
that
second guessing.
if I could talk to myself from like 2015, 2016 and be like, by the way, in 5 or 6 years, you are
You're
going
taking your kids to
you are
church.
going to be taking your wife and kids to church every week, so that one of your children, and there's reasons behind why only one of my kids is going to a Christian school. Like, I'm not playing favorites or anything. It's just their circumstances. Anyway, that's besides the point. But if I told myself from 5 or 6 years ago, like, by the way, you're going to be dressing up on a Sunday morning to take your wife and kids to church, and you're going to be totally fine and happy and okay with it, I'd be like, you're fucking crazy, dude.
Clearly, I'm a meth addict
Yeah,
in the future.
exactly. Uh, So anyway,
All right, well, let's get into it.
yeah, let's get into this interview. This is Milke Saliba. He is running for Senate seat for the District
10, isn't it?
Yeah, District 10. And then he is the founder, CEO, owner of Axe Head Watches. So you might have heard some ads for Axe Head Watches on the Tom Woods podcast or Part of the Problem. So anyway, that's Mike is that guy. So hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to We Love the State. This is the state-sanctioned podcast. I am your ridiculously attractive host, Andy Coons, and over here to my left is my other ridiculously attractive, not as attractive as me, let's be honest, but he's up there. Ben DeJong. How you doing, Ben?
Good. I'm still working on the beard, so I'm hoping maybe that's the magic sauce behind your ridiculous attractiveness.
Well, we have a guy who's I would argue is more attractive than the both of us combined. We've got Milke Saliba. Mike, how are you?
Doing good.
All right, did I pronounce your name right?
Yep.
All right, good. I was waiting for you to be like, it's Saliba, dumbass, or something.
No, that is what every telemarketer calls me, though.
Well, Mike,
I get the DeJong, so
oh yeah. DeJong. Mike, where do people know you from?
Probably the Libertarian Party of Michigan in some way, shape, or form. Other than that, maybe the Tom Woods show through my advertisements there, or the No Agenda podcast. Other than that, just running for office every couple of years for the last like 8 years.
All right.
Wow, we got a professional.
Yeah. So you're also owner, founder, I would guess, of Axe Head Watches.
Yes.
All right, which beautiful watches. If anybody listening to this, like, these things are made out of wood. They are gorgeous. So I'm not a watch guy, but I was talking to my wife earlier today, and I was like, you have to check out these watches. These things are amazing, because I am a big appreciator of craftsmanship, and they just look gorgeous.
And hopefully coming to Amazon within the next month or so.
Oh hell yeah!
Wow, well, that could really take off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So remember us. Remember your favorite podcast. All right. So you're running for, you say, was it a Senate seat? My brain's in 50
United
different
States
places.
House of Representatives in Michigan's new 10th district.
Hell yeah. All right. So real quick, what was the thing, at least this time, or actually, you know what? Let's forget about this time. Let's think about the first time you ever ran. What was there a key issue or event or anything like that made you go like, I gotta get in this and try to shake shit up?
Yeah. In 2014, the Libertarian Party had a affiliate in my county, Macomb County, third largest county in the state, but they weren't taking on any new members. And that was I didn't officially join the party as in becoming a card-carrying, dues-paying member until 2012. And I didn't quite get what that meant, as much. I first went door to door for the Libertarian Party in 2000 when I was 16, but I became the real true believer, put my money where my mouth is guy in 2012. And I wanted to start coming to meetings, and the meetings were going on, but they weren't taking in new members. So I happened to be at at the St. Patrick's Day parade, and I saw a guy who had a baby on his head, but he was yelling at the cops for some reason. And I thought to myself, everybody else is uncomfortable by this guy, but I want to go talk to him. And he turned out to be a friend of mine, now a friend of mine, who was involved in the Libertarian Party, and he kind of got me coming to actual meetings and state conventions. And in 2014, when I went to go vote, I didn't have almost any libertarians to vote for because that county affiliate was not being very active. So in by 2016, I formed my own affiliate and nominated myself and started getting people onto the ballot. And the first one was state representative. I'd never been that pretty much turned on to state politics over like the big federal issues. You know, like a lot of libertarians come in with like, we got to end the war on drugs and end the wars overseas. And none of those are really state issues, really. They're big federal issues. But then I found out like the state of Michigan had made it illegal to do home beekeeping. And I'm just like, all right, well, that's ridiculous. And I started like just coming up with other state local issues that I could sink my teeth into. And that's how I got into the first race for state representative.
It's illegal to grow your own bees?
At least that's what I read at some point. I know people who do it now, so I don't know if that like never went through or if people just ignore it but I just remember thinking like, what a stupid, small, petty law. Also, it was when like we were all really scared that the bees were dying off and going away and we were all going to go extinct from it. It's like when they chose to pass this law or propose this law or whatever happened with it.
You know, as far as the bee issue, something that I've always found hilarious is bees are not native to the United States. Like they were brought over from European settlers, and people are like, if we, my God, if we lose the bees, humanity's going to die in 2 years. I'm like, well, what did we do for the bazillions of years before bees showed up here? You know, they're not the only insect that pollinates plants.
That's true.
Kind of reminds me of I can't remember, I think it was a couple of years ago where somebody got arrested for buying unpasteurized milk because of those laws. I think it was like some Amish dairy. I mean, they get fined heavily. It just that's the kind of stuff like the local issues that you just shake your head and going, this is what we're talking about in Michigan. This is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So were you always kind of a libertarian? Did you start in, you know, one of the two major parties and then came to libertarianism, or what was that progression like?
I never started out really in either of the two major parties. I sort of like started just paying more attention to politics in high school, just through current events classes and stuff. Although I do remember the 1992 election, for which I was 8 years old, and still really thinking Ross Perot had that thing. So I guess I've always been into third party politics in one way or another. But and I knew I wasn't a Democrat, but there were the stereotypes of Republicans like, oh, they don't like gay people. I'm like, well, that's lame. So it was actually through Harry Brown's 2000 infomercial that he put out, The Great Libertarian Offer, which is also one of his books, but he put it out as a infomercial. And I saw that and kind of got hooked into it. And there were probably some parts of the philosophy as a baby libertarian I didn't quite get. But, and also I had like a really knee-jerk reaction to 9/11 in 2001 where I'm like, well, what do libertarians think about war? Like, oh, they're anti-war? Well, no, how we're going to kill those people. So I think I was a neocon for a couple of years there, but then I came back on board in time for Michael Bednarik, who just passed, but I was into his presidential campaign as well.
Yeah, it seems a lot of people. It's crazy how 9/11 affected a lot of people. Whenever I sort of left religion and became an atheist, I started listening to all the atheism podcasts and stuff like that. I don't really give a shit about atheism or religion anymore, but there was a ton of people who were like, they saw the towers come down. They're like, there's no such thing as God. You know, it's just crazy, you know, crazy how that thing affected people in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of people during 9/11 who also said like, well, if this was caused by religion, then what do I want to have to do with religion?
Right.
I know a lot of people who had that reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was my senior year in high school, and I was still 17, but for some reason my school had it set up that if you were a senior male and you were going to turn 18 anytime between the first and last day of school, you had to sign your draft card. And it was due that Friday, and I turned it in that Friday, and then that following Tuesday was 9/11.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, what did I just sign up for?
That had to be terrifying.
Yeah, it was a really strange feeling.
Mm-hmm. Most of my I was raised by like conservative Christians, and I mean neocon by every definition or by every metric. And so I remember whenever I signed my draft card, I was all like, let me preface this to anybody who haven't seen like my entire body. I am a fat bag of garbage, you know, and always have like my whole life. And so I remember signing that draft card being like, dude, if I get drafted into the military, I'm definitely going to lose weight. That was like my most
Trying to find the upside.
yeah.
That's actually how I started lifting weights, because I was 100 pounds skinnier than I am now. I'm like, I can't do a push-up. Like, I gotta get this into gear.
Mm-hmm. So other than honeybees, what are some of the big sort of like kitchen table issues as far as people in Michigan are concerned? Like what are the big things that you want to tackle?
Well, now I am running for federal office, so I have been spending a lot more time focusing on sort of those big federal issues. But in Michigan, mostly we're one of the top highest taxed states. I think our state tax really needs to be rearranged. If you look at the states that are growing the most, they're the ones with no state income tax. And there's just some other things. It's like, you can't believe, like, why is this a thing in Michigan? And like, it just seems like we're sort of behind, in the 2016 presidential election. Gary Johnson would always refer to the 50 states as 50 engines of ingenuity competing against each other to create new ideas. Michigan's got to be pretty low on that list right now. We are not a well-oiled engine of ingenuity in this state anymore. And then we have been experiencing brain drain. And I think, a good example right now is Texas. I think Texas sees that, and I think there's sort of low regulation, especially compared to California's high regulation. Texas always was Silicon Prairie from the beginning, but they lost a lot of that to California, and now it's all coming back. And everything from Elon Musk, and I think you're probably going to start seeing. I'm counting on at least probably like one of like the bigger sort of, maybe not Google, maybe not Facebook, but somebody's going to relocate their entire operation to Texas sooner or later. Mm-hmm. Especially the way things are up in Silicon Valley. Anybody from that field who's trying to, maybe enjoy San Francisco right now, that's not. Nobody with brains or money wants to deal with that for much longer.
Not all the homeless people shit.
Well, yeah.
The literal homeless people shit.
Homeless people shit, as in homeless people stuff, or the literal feces they had to develop an app to track.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's got to be one of my favorite stories. It's that some nerd out there was like, somebody needs to keep track of all these piles of shit.
And just you can't have a CVS anymore.
So looking back at a lot of the other offices that you've run for, is there, what, especially for those who are either running in political offices or campaigns or thinking about it, what are some things that you found that you think really work? And like, what are some things that you're like, that I've tried that 3 times, I get no response, no results, I'm not doing that again?
There's a lot of people who say yard signs don't work anymore, but I haven't seen any evidence to that. Particularly 2016, I got out a lot of yard signs, as many as I could in different places. And when I would go back and I would check, the results, Clinton Township was like putting out their results by precinct. So I would have to go through each precinct to see the results. And that was when, Gary Johnson, top of ticket, did really well enough to get us into primary status. But if you look at the precincts where, I had a sign in that neighborhood, I was double or quadruple him. And I thought, I did really good my first time out, but it's because we actually had the most successful presidential candidate in terms of, vote getting. And I just sort of rode those coattails. But when I started looking at the numbers, I'm like, actually, I'm doing better than him in a lot of these precincts. And when I look at the map and that's a neighborhood where, just one person had a sign, but one person had that sign. So I think yard signs do still work. I think catchphrases probably work for my bid for state senate. I just made a sign that says, I picked a single issue and I just said, car insurance is too damn high.
Hell yeah.
And we do live in the state with the highest car insurance. And I just put those everywhere. And also my Democratic opponent had a pretty big Facebook campaign. And Facebook's, my preferred social media platform. Every time he posted something, I just, with my Milke Saliba for state senate profile, posted car insurance is too damn high. And I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that. And whenever I saw the Republican, I would say it too, but a lot to the Democrat. And by the time the election rolled around, both the Republican and Democrat had car insurance reform on their platforms. And I don't remember seeing it at the beginning, but they were both had it at the end.
That's
and then we
cool.
did actually have some degree of car insurance reform, and I didn't get a crappy government job.
So
and that's nice, good to point out that even in a loss, you can affect positive change.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people get discouraged and I'm not going to vote for the libertarian or what's the point in running? We're not going to win anyhow. But I think that's a great example of actually moving the needle on an issue or a topic. It's nice to be able to say I pushed that. That was my doing. So that's awesome. Very, very good success story for sure.
Well, I like the idea of sort of the idea of using libertarian candidates as sort of I don't know the right word for it, or just leverage to get what you want. You have a libertarian candidate who's listen, I'm running in this area. If you want, I can drop out, but you have to do this, and whatever pushes that needle closer to liberty, I mean, I try to put myself in the position of a libertarian candidate running for some kind of office, and it's well, shit, if the Democrat or whatever is going to say we're going to stop prosecuting drug charges or whatever, I'd be like, fine, I can I can live without, like you said, a shitty government job.
Yeah. What I'm doing right now for my congressional race is I have my 4 core issues, and those are something a little bit different. But the main piece of legislation that I'm always pushing is HR 25, the fair tax. And I want that to be the thing. I want to at least make either the Republican or the Democrat lose. I think probably I'm going to take away more from the Republican. That's just how it usually goes. And I think they're more apt to want to embrace this anyways, even though it has had Republican and Democrat co-sponsors. It's been predominantly Republicans. And HR 25 is a bill that's already in office. It's already been co-signed by a lot of different people over the years. It's the most researched bill in office. So it's realistic, but it does abolish the IRS and end the income tax. And that's a libertarian issue that I would really like the other two parties to just steal from us and run with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is when I saw, I think it was you that posted about this on Facebook, and I saw that, and I was like, that's reasonable. Like, that is a reasonable, attainable step forward. It makes sense. It's pushing that needle towards liberty. Like I think it's a fantastic idea. I find it super, super interesting, and I I can't remember who it was, but somebody responded and was like, "This is really good. Like, we don't want to make perfect the enemy of good, you know."
Yes.
And that's something that really hit me like a freight train. I was like, yes, we don't want perfect to be the enemy of good, because we can't just go from shitty straight to perfect. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of libertarians, like the dyed-in-the-wool hardcore libertarians, first thing they always want to say is, well, there's no such thing as a fair tax, just because the name of the bill happens to be the fair tax. Like, all right, if we get past the name, though, like maybe there's a little bit more to this than just its title.
Yeah, there is such a thing as a better tax.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, unless you have Rothbard's button in your back pocket, like, there are no bills to just end all taxation already in committee in Congress. But this one's here, and it gets rid of the IRS. It has a sunset on it that demands the repeal of the 16th Amendment, and it gets rid of the income tax, Social Security tax, corporate tax, payroll tax, and inheritance tax all in one. Replaces it with one tax that you can avoid by buying used or doing your own chores. That's it.
So
there you go. If you can find something better than that actually exists in reality, okay. But right now, this is what exists in reality as something that can be co-signed, that has quite a few $1 million behind it, and has sort of like some big names behind it in the two-party system.
So let's say that this bill is passed. Let's say it gets signed into law. All right. Is there a number on the percentage for the sales tax?
So if you want to sell it as revenue neutral, basically to still bring in as much money as all those other taxes do, it's 23% at the register on new goods and services. But that doesn't actually mean new goods and services will cost 23% more, since the average item has somewhere between 18 and 20% of embedded taxes in it, which is all those corporate and payroll taxes that the company making it has to pay and everything on the chain has to pay, but then also the amount they have to pay to accountants and tax professionals and lawyers to navigate the taxes as well. All business-to-business transactions become completely untaxed. So anything that's up the supply chain is all of a sudden not having to pay any taxes, but not having to pay any compliance. If you look at just like one item, you know, especially think of something like a car. Like, a car has parts from, I don't know, I used to work at a heat treat plant, and we would get, you know, a part from this company, and a part from that company, and a part from this company, and they would all go into one car. And then, by the way, they all had to go to our heat treat plant, and like every one of those companies down the way had an accountant, had a tax professional, and had all the corporate taxes involved. You strip those away, you actually reduce the cost of the item enough to almost offset, not quite, but when you keep in mind you're getting your whole paycheck, you're actually doing better in the end, even with what sounds like a large percent, 23% tax. And the other thing to remember is everybody gets the same, equal under the law monthly prebate check. And the prebate is basically whatever poverty level spending is set to be at that time. And then whatever the fair tax is, so say the fair tax is 23%, you'll get 23% of poverty spending back every month. So if all you spent was the poverty level spending, you essentially paid zero taxes. And if you spent double the poverty level, well, half of what you spent was untaxed and half of what you spent was taxed. So you're not really paying 23% effective tax rate.
You're paying 12.5%.
Yeah, something like that. So on and so forth, going up.
11.5%. I was never good at math.
Yeah.
So where did it, who was the brainchild that kind of developed this new tax system?
There were some businessmen in Texas who, they were at a board meeting and they realized that half of every board meeting was just discussing the various taxes that their corporation had to deal with and how can they avoid them. Should we move this factory here? Should we move this office there? Should we do this if we open up an account over here? Should we hire a lobbyist to maybe get rid of this? Should we hire a lobbyist to reinforce this? It was easier. They between, I don't know how many of them there initially were, but it was like rich guys who all knew each other. They all owned businesses, all in Texas mostly. They put together a fund, which ended up being about $20 million, and just hired economists to, all right, just come up with the best tax. And it wasn't necessarily that they demanded it be a consumption tax or something like that. It was just whatever you think is going to work best. Do the math, talk to each other, be a think tank. And over the course of a few years, they ended up coming up with what we call the fair tax, and it got written into a bill that's 125 pages or so, compared to I think it's 175 pages, and we have about 125,000 pages of tax code as it stands right now that we can get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that they're kind of pushing for in other states, or is it predominantly getting the most traction in Michigan?
Oh, it's a federal plan. It's had co-signers from almost all over the country. Now it has been adopted into a state version. So like, for instance, in Michigan, we could get rid of our state income tax and our property tax, by making a version of this, but this is all federal level. Some of the co-signers in the past have been like Mike Huckabee, Ron DeSantis, did I say Mike Huckabee? All right, Mike Pence, Thomas Massey is one of the current co-signers. So that's Democrats, mostly from Pennsylvania. It's had some attention in California. Marjorie Taylor Greene just tweeted about it the other day. I'm like, I probably agree with like 3 things in the whole world, including the sky is blue and the fair tax with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but here you go. And, I'm glad, it's sort of similar to the Green New Deal. Everybody now has heard about the Green New Deal, but that started with Jill Stein's run for president in the Green Party. Mm-hmm. And it got lifted by some Democrats and publicized by them. But now we've all heard of it. People who want the Green New Deal, I don't, but people who do want it have never even heard of Jill Stein, but that's where it came from. And that's what I'm kind of hoping, if more libertarians can do this and make a few big party candidates mad that they lost a few percent here or there, then we can start getting it back into the mainstream again, especially with what's now happening with the IRS, 87,000 new armed agents and whatnot.
That was probably some of the scariest news I ever heard. Was 87.
The opposite of the fair tax.
Yeah, tax at the barrel of a gun. That's not a plan that I think most people wouldn't be a big fan of.
Have you guys seen the videos of these like gun training sessions for these IRS agents? First of all, they are fucking hilarious. Like, somebody tweeted a picture of it, and I never remember who posts anything, but somebody posted a picture of all these people training, and it was like soccer mom, wino Karen ladies, and then there was a dude in a wheelchair, and I was like, I think we're fine. Like, they hired Karens and Professor X, like, we're fine.
Yeah, and then give them guns.
Yeah.
Well, I heard now that I think IRS is almost going to double in size, and to the point now it's so big they'd be bigger than the Pentagon. So you're talking about a military force for theft, the size of a typical army almost
Hmm.
in a lot of countries, and that's being turned on our own citizens. So it is crazy to think we have something like the fair tax that could alleviate so much, but instead we've turned a horrible tax system into a job program
Yeah.
basically, and so it's
Yeah.
just a way to continue to grow the federal government and grow jobs.
Yeah, the
Non-productive.
fair tax doesn't even have a federal agency in charge of collecting it, since 46 of the states already collect their own sales tax at the register. The federal government just hires those agencies to collect the fair tax for them, kicks them back a little bit money for their trouble, and then uses some of it to set those up for the 4 states that don't have it. But other than that, even tax collection gets completely decentralized down to the state level for it.
What do you think? I mean, what do you think our country looks like? If this thing gets passed, I mean, like what? I mean, obviously
So,
people have more money in their pockets, but I mean, what are some of the bigger effects that you think would take place because of this?
yeah, the average citizen keeps their whole paycheck. That's already good. Investments all become completely untaxed. Here's one way that probably a non-libertarian doesn't see that, but a libertarian should, is right now our gold and silver,
Hmm.
for the most part, and our crypto gets taxed as an investment. So it really becomes a barrier to using those things as alternative currencies. But once all investment becomes untaxed, then you can actually start using those as a currency and not just something you hodl. Um, we all have heard about Swiss bank accounts. People would park, rich people would park their money in Switzerland in order to not pay taxes. At Under the fair tax, that becomes pointless. Your savings account at your local credit union is a Swiss bank account. It's estimated this year that repatriates $13 trillion in funds. If you've ever heard of some of the schemes Amazon goes through to not pay taxes, they have like your money actually ends up passing through 5 different corporations in 5 different countries in order to just always be moving and like not getting taxed. That completely goes out the window. One estimate shows that because of all the added costs and compliances to college tuition goes down by about 40%. Like I said, a car has about 20% built-in cost from tax compliance and corporate taxes. So since only
20% of the cost of a car.
so essentially American-made cars become 20% less on the international market because people outside the United States don't live here, so they don't need to pay our tax. So anything we export becomes free of taxation and makes us more competitive around the world. Anybody who opens up a factory here isn't going to have to pay any corporate taxes on that factory. Some degree of manufacturing, obviously not all, there's just some things that you can do in other countries so much cheaper because of wages. But if you're trying to avoid taxes, this is where you do it. I think a lot more of the sort of higher end manufacturing, especially things, like with our chip shortage, now, they say like the chips that they make in China aren't going to be, your computer processor, what's running your computer, but it might be what makes it beep, when it opens up the disk drive or whatever, or, when your margarita's done blending, something like that. Those types of chips get made in China. But the high level chips, about 60% of them get made here, and the rest get made in Taiwan, which is in trouble, Korea, which is expensive. Japan, I think, is moving away from it. I think they've become too expensive for it already. But I think those higher end things make more sense when the competition isn't China. If the competition is another first world country, like chips from South Korea, Taiwan, or cars from Germany, those do get moved here, I think, because it becomes a big cost saving initiative.
I
And then
want
also
to I want to
investment.
I want to jump on what you said about chips in Taiwan. This is really interesting to me. So we get this tax signed into law. All right. We can start manufacturing all those chips here. We have zero incentive to get involved with China and Taiwan, and zero incentive, other than because the people in power right now, they don't give a fuck about Taiwanese people. They don't care whatsoever. It's because they make chips there. It's because we get cheap shit there.
Yeah.
But if we can make cheap shit here, there's no reason for us to get involved. Think of all the lives that get saved. Think of all the American soldiers that don't have to die. Think of all the Taiwanese and Chinese soldiers that don't have to die because we're going to go and drone strike a bunch of fucking villages out in Taiwan or out in China or something like that. I mean, these are like the really big ramifications that I'm talking about. Is like this shit can save people's lives. It can save us from causing all kinds of destruction through war and intervention and stuff like that.
And so many people don't think of those ramifications when they just hear, "Oh, you want to keep your whole paycheck." I'm like, "No, there's a lot that goes into this."
Yeah.
So back to the 23%, is that strictly then sales tax? So the only tax would be on purchasing goods or services?
Yeah. And so let's just say whatever you were going to buy gets that 23% tacked onto it. But then let's remember it's getting about 18 to 20% lopped off of it. It still gets a little bit more expensive, but you have your whole paycheck and you get your monthly prebate check. I have the prebate schedule with me somewhere, but we were cleaning today. I think I put them all away, but I could tell you what you get every month. And that's the other thing. As much as we like black markets, every black market trade becomes taxed anyways because we don't try and find the business taking place. It's just eventually the drug dealer or the mobster or the what have you is going to buy something with what they made. And when they buy something with what they made, because that's the point of making money, the tax gets paid. For the left-wing folks, you can always put it that a rich guy who buys a $600,000 Rolls Royce is going to pay a lot more than the guy who buys like the $45,000 Toyota. And by the way, the lower paid person who buys a used car not only is helping the environment, but pays zero taxes anyways. And for the right-wing guys who, are complaining about all these illegal immigrants. Well, all these illegal immigrants are now paying more into the tax system than you are because they're not getting a monthly prebate check. And it incentivizes the type of more documented immigration that they call for, not by force, not by threat of getting kicked out, not by building a wall they have to climb, but just the financial incentive is you can save money on your taxes if you actually sign up to be here. Because that's the main reason to stay undocumented is to be off the grid and not pay taxes.
Yeah.
But every job becomes an under the table job under the fair tax.
I just keep thinking of more and more like positive things that come out of this. Like there's not going to be enough money to maintain like the size of the ATF or the size of the FBI or the size of the CIA. There's not going to be enough money to this is weirdly, I mean, libertarians talking about roads, but like I almost feel like there wouldn't be enough money to maintain the roads, and so the federal government would have to sell off the roads, or the state governments would have to sell the roads and privatize them.
Well, with the 23% version of it, they do make as much money as they make now. Now, granted, they already spend more money than they make anyways. But the one thing that does happen is right now, if a politician says they're going to cut taxes, we really have no way. Every Trump supporter swears to me that Trump cut taxes, but I'm like, how much and on what by where? And they couldn't tell me because it's all, this this bracket got higher, this bracket got lower, this bracket got moved around, but now I'm paying for a tariff, but the corporate went down, but the payroll went up, and all this. Now, every time taxes go up, if it's the fair tax, you see it on your receipt at the store. And if it goes down, you're going to be really happy and you're going to know it. And you're going to be able to quantify it. If it goes up, you're going to be really mad and you're going to be able to quantify it. And even though it is revenue neutral, first time I heard about the fair tax, I'm like, who wants revenue neutral? I want to decrease the size of government. But this does decrease the size of government because not having an IRS saves you so much privacy. And not having that much enforcement is so much less law enforcement. But also, you know what? Us as libertarians, once the fair tax does get passed, there's nothing stopping us from going, the fair tax is too damn high, and start shrinking it from there. And then it's a lot easier to lower a single tax than it is all of the taxes that get replaced by the fair tax in the hundreds of thousands of pages of code that get eliminated by the fair tax. And I should say, the fair tax passes as a regular bill in Congress, simple majority, but it does require that within 7 years, the 16th Amendment gets repealed. It's harder to repeal an amendment, obviously, but if the 16th Amendment does not get repealed, making the income tax illegal again, the fair tax sunsets and goes away. So we never end up in a situation where we're doing both. And I think 7 years is enough time to say it's either going to be really popular or it's not. And if it's really popular, we can get an amendment appealed.
Yeah, it's nice that anything when you have some like guardrails like that. So that way it's not, because, you know, anytime you introduce something in DC, especially if it's supposed to sunset something else, it never does. It just adds to, you know, the behemoth that is Washington, D.C. So what do you think? What's the chances of this actually passing? Because it sounds like it's been through the ringer a few times and just never got traction. Or
that accurately describes it. So, but it's always had a pretty strong base, and you know, I wasn't thrilled with Mike Pence as vice president of the United States, but I'm like, oh, that guy was a fair tax co-signer. And I won't be thrilled with the prospect of Ron DeSantis necessarily as president of the United States, but ooh, that guy was a fair tax co-signer. And I think if we get more of that and the negative attention, specifically within the last few weeks, that is being put on federal agencies like the IRS and specifically the IRS, there's going to be an appetite for it. And we also have seen sort of the way Andrew Yang made waves in the last election. That sort of app now, like the prebate is not universal basic income. You wouldn't be able to live off the prebate the way he was proposing. You would have this extra $1,000, but it is a monthly check. And he was proposing a value-added tax, which value-added taxes are much more regressive than the fair tax. But it's like, yes, this is a tax on consumption that's simple to understand. It just gets rid of all that other stuff too. I don't think Andrew Yang was ever interested in getting rid of everything else, but on the left, and just the way you can describe it as being something that makes education more affordable, that taxes you the more you spend. Who spends more? The rich people, if they want to. That's the thing, is you can choose to make this a voluntary tax. Now, if you want to avoid taxes, you form a corporation, you hire a CPA and some lawyers, and make all the correct purchases you need to do to have a bunch of write-offs and give to some charities and do this and, you know, maybe plant your money here. Under the fair tax, if you want to avoid paying taxes, either as cost saving or protest of the government, if a new war starts and you say, I'm not paying taxes while this war starts, shop at the thrift store, buy a used car, paint your own house, mow your own lawn. You can almost pay zero taxes that way if you want to. Who already does stuff like that? Lower income people. If you want to help them avoid taxes, there it goes.
So this fair tax, this is the big thing that you're going to be pushing for when you get elected.
Yeah. The other thing I'm doing now is just trying to build a coalition behind my 4 core issues. And if you were around for Ron Paul's 2008 campaign, after he was done in the Republican primaries, but did not want to endorse McCain, he held a press conference that was for the Constitution Party candidate, the Libertarian Party candidate, the Green Party candidate, and Ralph Nader, who was running as an independent at the time, to all coalesce around 4 issues. And I've basically only slightly edited those to bring them up to 2022. But those are my 4 issues, especially because the Green Party candidate doesn't have, or the Green Party doesn't have a candidate in this district, neither does the Constitution Party. And the Constitution Party was already handing out brochures for me at an event. So I'm trying to, it's going to be a close enough race. This district didn't exist 2 years ago, but if it had, if you look at the vote results from 2 years ago, they would have come up 51% Democrat, 49% Republican. And that was when we had a Democrat incumbent covering most of the area. Whereas now there is no incumbent and we have a much weaker Democrat and a much stronger Republican. So I think it's closer even than 51 to 49 right now. So my chance of playing spoiler and ruining somebody's day and wishing they had co-signed the fair tax pledge or some other thing is doing really good right now. And if I can get a little bit of support from would-be Green Party voters, would-be Constitution Party voters, and there is a Michigan Forward Party that doesn't have ballot access yet, so they don't have any Forward Party people to vote for. Mm-hmm. I could ruin somebody's day in this election. That's my plan.
Hell yeah. That's what I like to hear.
Kind of nice to be able to throw your weight around, and especially when there's topics like fair tax that you want to have at the table, you really stand a good chance of making waves because of that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So well, let's wrap things up. Mike, if people want to learn more about you, or if they want to follow you, or anything like that, where do they need to go?
Votesaliba.com is my new website that just came out 2 days ago. Saliba is S as in Sam, A-L-I-B as in boy, A. And also a lot on Facebook. And I just got on Twitter for the first time too, and that's been fun.
Hell yeah. A lot of people hate Twitter. I fucking love it.
I can't stand Twitter.
I love Twitter.
I like Twitter because I can make a tweet and then screenshot it and make that into a Facebook post.
I love Twitter because they are, I mean, I know a ton of people have gotten kicked off and stuff, but man, I can get away with saying a whole lot of off-color shit on Twitter versus Facebook, or especially TikTok. I did a TikTok video about the 4th of July saying, like, why don't we celebrate the 4th of July when we had a whole revolution, blah, 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 blah. And people are like, oh, well, that's violent extremism. And I got like a temporary ban thing, a violent extremism. Yeah. It was crazy.
The thing that happened on the day we're celebrating.
I didn't even say to kill even that much people. That's what's ridiculous.
Yeah, just the British.
Yeah. Goddamn redcoats. All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed having you on here. We need to get you back on post-election and
for sure,
and talk to you some more. And our door is always open. If you want to jump on, let us know.
Okay, cool. I'm going to spend especially the next week, but the next few weeks, focused on all of the endorsements I'm trying to get. And I'm trying to mostly get endorsements from people who have served as Republicans and Democrats, because I think that also illustrates something for these ideas, that it's not just other libertarians that like them. And I think that's where more votes can come from, and also better media attention.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll let you know as those come in.
All right. Well, hey,
awesome.
We'll give some quick plugs for me and Ben, then we'll jump off of here. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Andy_Coons. That is Koons. If you want to follow me on TikTok, It's just at Andy Coons, Kons. We're still working on the locals. We're working on getting that put up there. We've got our Facebook group. Got more and more activity going on there. So come follow us, hit us up. We want to talk to you guys and get your thoughts.
Yeah, you can find me at Picture This 1979 on Instagram and Ben DeJong on Facebook.
All right. Thanks, everybody.